They say you should marry your best friend. I did. And she could shoot a sniper rifle better than any guy I knew. I met Emily in a Call of Duty lobby back in college. She headshot me 3 times in a row, then trash-talked me with a laugh that didn't feel mean, it felt like a dare. From there, we started messaging, gaming, joking, and then one night, she asked what town I was from. Turned out we were in the same state. We met in person 2 weeks later and moved in 3 months after that. Fast forward 5 years, and we're married. Still gaming. Still teammates. Our apartment is small, but it's ours. She works from home doing graphic design for indie studios, and I do warehouse shifts down by the docks. By the time I get home, she's already got 2 controllers on the couch, and usually a pizza box cracked open on the coffee table. That was our routine: headshots, high scores, and afterward, a different kind of high score in the bedroom. But lately, something had shifted. It started the night I caught the flicker. We were on the couch, playing a co-op zombie survival game. Emily was in her usual position, knees folded up, wearing one of my shirts and nothing else. It hung low enough to cover her thighs, barely. We were laughing, yelling at the screen, when I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. The window. I glanced at it again. Nothing. Then, 30 seconds later, as I was reloading my shotgun in-game, I caught it again, just a brief glint, like glasses reflecting streetlight. The hell? I muttered. Emily looked at me. Lagging? No, I said. I think someone's looking through the window. She froze. Then gave a nervous laugh. Are you serious? Pretty sure. I got up and walked over. The blinds were half closed, and through the narrow slit, I saw someone shift back behind the tall bush outside. Who the hell? I yanked the blinds open. Too late. The guy was gone. Emily stood next to me, peering out, her hand resting on my back. Maybe it's that weird neighbor. I knew who she meant. Brian. Lived 2 doors down, drove a beat-up white Ford truck, always said hi too slow, like his mouth was chewing the word. He'd helped us carry a new couch in a few months back. Nice enough. But there was something off. Something in the way he lingered when she bent to pick something up. After that night, I started keeping an eye out. And I started seeing patterns. Every time we gamed late, the curtains would flicker. Sometimes when Emily got up to grab something from the kitchen, especially when she wore just a tank top and panties, I could swear someone was out there watching. Then came the Wednesday that changed everything. I'd just gotten home. Emily was in the bedroom, changing after a shower. The door was halfway open. I passed by, planning to grab a soda, but something made me stop. She was in just her underwear. Light pink panties. Her hair still wet. She stood in front of the mirror adjusting her bra, except she wasn't wearing one. And her eyes weren't on the mirror. They were on the window. I followed her gaze. The blinds were cracked open just enough. And there he was. Brian. Staring. She saw him. I know she did. And then she bent forward, slow. Adjusting her foot in some weird half-stretch that just so happened to angle her rear perfectly toward the window. I stepped back, my breath caught. She lingered there. Like she was putting on a performance. My fingers tightened around the soda can. When she finally straightened up, she glanced one more time at the window, then reached over and closed the blinds with a little smile. That night, she was more aggressive than usual in bed. Almost hungry. As if she were still putting on a show. I couldn't sleep. A week later, I decided to test a theory. I fell asleep on the couch after our game session. I left one eye barely cracked open, blanket up to my chin. Emily got up, padded to the kitchen, then came back. She hovered near me for a second, maybe to make sure I was out cold. Then I heard her unlock the front door. Soft click. Slow creak. Footsteps. I held my breath. A whisper. Then the unmistakable shuffle of feet down the hallway toward the bedroom. I waited a full minute. Then I stood up. My heart was a fist pounding my ribs. The door to our bedroom was shut. Light glowed from the bottom crack. I pushed it open. They were both naked. His hands were on her hips. Her mouth was on his shoulder. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but she didn't even cover herself. I didn't scream. I didn't punch him. I just turned around, walked out of the room, and went straight to my computer. If she wanted a game, I was going to give her one she'd never forget. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the betrayal, though that alone was enough to keep me staring at the ceiling, but because of how calm I felt. It was eerie. I sat at my desk, the soft hum of the PC fan in my ears, trying to remind myself that this wasn't a nightmare. That I really did just walk in on my wife with the guy who'd been creeping around our window for weeks. She didn't even try to explain. Didn't run after me. Didn't shout, "Wait. It's not what it looks like." Because it was exactly what it looked like. I could hear them whispering in the bedroom, then the sound of him getting dressed and leaving through the front. The door clicked softly. No slamming. No footsteps running down the hall in shame. Just silence. A few minutes later, Emily appeared in the hallway, naked except for a towel draped around her shoulders. "Are you going to say something?" she asked. I turned slightly in my chair. "Why? You looked like you were enjoying yourself." She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "I didn't mean for you to see that. But you meant for him to see you all those other times, didn't you? Changing clothes. Stretching in front of the window. Bending over." She blinked. "You were watching me?" I laughed bitterly. "I was watching him. And then I realized you were, too." She didn't answer. I stood up and looked her in the eyes. "Go to bed. We'll talk in the morning." She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, then turned and disappeared into the bedroom. I heard the door click softly behind her. I stayed on the couch. The next morning, she acted like everything was fine. She made coffee. Fried eggs. Even poured me orange juice like it was just another Saturday morning and not the day after she destroyed our marriage. "I want to talk," she said, sliding the plate across the table. "Talk," I said. She looked unsure. "It didn't mean anything. Brian's just a distraction. Something different. You don't really pay attention to me anymore." That old line. The classic guilt trip. I took a slow sip of juice and looked her in the eyes. "So you thought letting the neighborhood creep screw you in our bed would make me, what? Fall back in love with you?" She flinched, but then something in her face changed. She didn't look guilty. She looked smug. "You don't own me," she said. Maybe I liked him watching. Maybe I liked the way he touched me. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not from pain. Not from heartbreak. But from clarity. I smiled. And that scared her more than if I'd yelled. Over the next week, I started setting things in motion. The first thing I did was buy 2 small motion sensor cameras. Cheap ones, off an app. I hid one above the front door, angled low. The other, I stuck in the air vent across from the bedroom. Discreet. Barely visible. Emily had no clue. She was back to pretending like we were fine. Cooking dinner, lounging in short shorts, trying to laugh with me during game time. But I could see the difference now. She wasn't playing games with me anymore. She was performing for him. And it was working. The camera picked up footage of Brian sneaking in 3 nights that week. Each time, Emily greeted him like she was welcoming a guest to a hotel room. No guilt. Just excitement. I saved every file. Backed them up to an external drive. The second phase of my plan started with my job. At the warehouse, there's a guy named Lester, older, quiet, no nonsense. But when you get him talking, turns out he used to be a PI in Texas before he moved here to retire. I invited him for beers one Friday after work. "You ever do side work?" I asked casually. He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of side work?" "Neighbor trouble. Just need eyes on a guy for a week. Maybe snap some photos." Lester leaned back in his chair, sipping from a brown bottle. "You got a cheating wife?" I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. He nodded. "I'll do it for $250. Cash." "Deal." That weekend, Emily went to her mom's place 2 towns over, at least, that's what she said. Lester followed her car and reported back, she never left town. She met up with Brian at a motel off the interstate. They spent 2 nights there. He got photos of them walking out, laughing, her holding his hand like a teenager at prom. When she got home Sunday night, she acted exhausted. "Traffic was hell," she muttered, dropping her bag near the door. "Yeah?" I asked. "Next time maybe just stay at the motel." She froze. Her mouth opened slightly. "What?" "You heard me." She stared at me, eyes darting, processing. That's when I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and tossed it on the table. "I've got cameras, Emily. I've got video. And I've got photos. You lied to me. You cheated in our bed. And now you're going to pay." She reached for the USB, but I slapped my hand down over it. "No," I said. "This isn't for you. This is for the lawyer." Her face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "I'm divorcing you," I said. "And you'll be lucky if all I do is leave." She laughed. That's what shocked me the most. After everything, the lies, the cheating, the motel, the cameras, Emily looked me straight in the face and let out a smug, mocking laugh. "You," she said. "You're going to divorce me?" I stared at her in disbelief. "What's so funny? You think anyone's going to believe you didn't drive me into this?" She folded her arms and leaned against the fridge. "You're a boring warehouse guy who plays games all night. You never take me anywhere, never dress nice, never show me off. You think that USB is some kind of smoking gun? Please. Judges see stuff like this every day." I said nothing. "I'll tell them you were distant, emotionally neglectful. That I begged you to care. You think you're the victim, but you're just small." That last word hit me. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I needed to know. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't scared. She was already planning how to flip the story and make herself the hero. And Brian? That sleazeball was probably in on it too. I could imagine them, tangled up in cheap motel sheets, laughing at me, thinking I was too soft, too stupid to notice. They thought they were winning. But this game had just entered its final level. The next morning, I got up early. Emily was still asleep, or pretending to be. I left quietly and drove straight to a lawyer's office. His name was Craig Lohman. Recommended by Lester. He wasn't flashy, but he was sharp. The kind of guy who looked like he could skin someone alive with a smile. I handed him the USB and the printed motel photos. He scrolled through the videos, raising his eyebrows. "You were right to come to me. What are my options?" I asked. "Well," he said, "infidelity is tricky in this state. But we've got solid proof. You combine this with the PI's testimony, and we've got leverage. A lot of it. We can push for favorable division of property. And if she thinks she can outplay you in court, well, she's not as clever as she thinks. Good, I said. Because this is only step one. Craig leaned back, smiling. I like your attitude. That night, I acted normal. Watched TV. Ordered takeout. Emily didn't say much. I think she was waiting to see if I'd crack. If I'd beg her to fix things. She still thought she had control. I waited until after dinner, then handed her an envelope. What's this? She asked. Separation agreement. I want you out by Friday. Her smile dropped. You're serious? Very. She opened the envelope and scanned the papers. You think you can just throw me out? You can stay if you want, I said casually. But you'll be living here alone. She blinked. What does that mean? I'm moving out. Temporarily. I'll be staying with a friend. But Brian can't come here. If I find out he's been inside this place again, I'll file a restraining order, and trust me, he's not the one on the lease. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I stood up, grabbed my go bag, and walked to the door. One more thing, I said, turning back. Don't touch my computer. I've already backed everything up. Try to delete anything, and you'll just make it worse for yourself. And then I left her standing there, speechless, in the middle of the living room. I moved in with Lester. Turned out he had a basement apartment he never used. Said I could stay as long as I wanted, rent-free. You've got the right instincts, he said one night over a drink. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they've won. That's when they slip. He was right. Over the next few days, Emily texted me a few times. Apologies at first. Then insults. Then silence. And then, photos. Selfies. Racy ones. The kind she used to send when we first started dating. Followed by a message. I miss you. Let's talk. But I knew what that meant. She was scared. Brian probably wasn't who she thought he was. He probably wasn't paying her bills. Maybe he didn't even want her for more than a fling. And now she was realizing she was about to lose everything. I didn't respond. Instead, I started phase 2. Brian was an idiot. I'd confirmed that much. He had a job at an auto body shop on the other side of town. Lester swung by and found out he was on probation, something about a bar fight 2 years back. Not exactly a clean record. Perfect. I created a fake email account. Sent an anonymous message to his parole officer. Included screenshots of him entering and exiting my home repeatedly, violating curfew hours and engaging in suspicious behavior. I also sent copies of him and Emily at the motel. Mentioned a pattern of inappropriate conduct with a married woman. The next week, Brian got a visit from the authorities. He didn't get arrested, but he definitely got a warning. I could tell, because Emily called me the next night in a panic. You're trying to ruin his life now, she yelled. He didn't do anything to you. He did everything, I said calmly. And so did you. This is sick. No, I said. This is justice. I wasn't done. Not even close. Brian getting a visit from his parole officer was just a small taste. I wanted him to squirm. I wanted Emily to realize that every decision she made, every smug smile, every lie, every door she closed behind my back, came with a cost. And I wasn't paying it anymore. They were. A week passed. Emily stopped texting. I could imagine the conversations in our apartment, her blaming Brian for the heat coming down, him blaming her for not keeping it discreet. Two impulsive people used to getting what they want. But I wasn't like them. I planned. Lester helped me with the next step. We drove out to a property management office on the edge of town. A friend of his, Angie, worked there. She owed him a favor from back when he helped catch her cheating ex. With her help, I did something quiet, simple, and effective. I transferred the lease into my name only. Emily's name was off it. I now had the legal right to evict her if I chose. You sure you want to go this far? Angie asked. I haven't even started, I said. Back at Lester's place, I spent a few hours crafting a plan. I remembered something Emily once told me during our first year of marriage. She was trying to become an influencer, back when she had a few thousand followers and thought Instagram would be our ticket to fame. She'd posted photos, sultry, suggestive, with heavy filters, and tried to get modeling gigs. Now, years later, she still had that account. Still posted her gym shots, her outfits, her gamer girl selfies. And still had that urge to be seen. So I gave her an audience. I used a few video clips from the USB drive, tasteful enough not to get flagged, but obvious enough to show what was happening. No nudity, just a woman in lingerie, arching her back for a man who wasn't her husband. I created a burner account and posted the clips anonymously on a cheating exposure page, one that specialized in calling out spouses. I blurred faces, but not enough that people who knew her wouldn't recognize her. The caption read, "Wife invites the neighbor over while husband sleeps in the other room. Marriage goals?" It didn't take long. Comments exploded within hours. Some supportive. Some cruel. Some speculative. A few even said what I'd been thinking. She's doing it for attention. This is a game to her. I didn't respond to any of them. I just watched. 2 days later, Emily called me, voice trembling. "Did you post something online? What makes you think that?" I said. "People are messaging me." My aunt called. She saw a video of me in our apartment. "What the hell are you doing?" "I haven't posted anything," I said flatly. "But maybe someone did. Maybe a neighbor saw something. Maybe the guy sneaking into our home wasn't as slick as he thought." "You're trying to ruin me." "No," I said, "I'm just helping the world see you the way I do." Click. She hung up. That night, Brian came home to find 2 tires slashed on his truck. He posted on Facebook about jealous losers with no life. The post had 10 likes, 2 from women I knew. Emily used to call her friends. The cracks were spreading. Then came the apartment showdown. Friday afternoon, I returned to the apartment unannounced. I'd waited for the exact moment Brian's shift would end and Emily would be home, right in their golden hour. I used my key and stepped in like I owned the place. Because I did. Emily was in the kitchen, wearing one of those tight workout outfits she knew turned heads. She looked up, startled. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I said, walking past her. "You can't just barge in." "Actually, I can. You're not on the lease anymore. You've got 2 options, Emily, pack up and leave, or stay and watch what happens next." She started to say something else, but that's when Brian walked in through the back door, keys in hand, and stopped cold. The 3 of us stood there, frozen. A triangle of lies and tension. "You," Brian said, stepping forward. "You think you're clever, huh? You think all this is funny?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I think it's justice." He clenched his fists. Emily stepped between us, panicked. "Stop. This is getting out of control." "Good," I said. "Let it." Then I pulled out the envelope. "What is that?" she asked. "A written notice. 30 days. You're being evicted. You can't do this." Brian barked. "You're not even supposed to be here," I snapped. "You're a guest in someone else's bed, someone else's home. I've got security footage, legal documentation, and I've filed a restraining order request. If I find you here again after this weekend, I'll call the cops, and you'll be breaking probation. Do you understand me? His mouth twisted, but he didn't say a word. Emily stared at the floor, her voice small. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem, I said. I turned and walked out, but before I closed the door, I looked back one last time. You turned our life into a game. But you forgot something, Emily. She looked up, eyes wide. I always win. The apartment felt cleaner without them in it. Quieter. It had been 4 days since I handed Emily the eviction papers and walked out. I hadn't stepped foot in the place since. I stayed at Lester's longer than I needed to, not because I was scared, but because I wanted the silence to sink into their heads. Let them squirm. Let them wonder what came next. The morning I returned, I found the place exactly how I expected, emptier, but not clean. Drawers half open. The smell of her perfume lingering in the bathroom. No goodbye note. No apology. Just silence and a missing gaming console I knew she took on purpose. I sat on the couch, took a breath, and smiled. One by one, the strings were breaking. But I wasn't done cutting. I hadn't talked to Emily since that last night. She tried calling twice, once late at night, once early in the morning. I didn't answer. But I did call someone else. Jessica. She was one of Emily's old high school friends. We'd double-dated once years ago. She and I weren't close, but she was one of the few people who never liked Brian. Or Emily's attitude when she got too full of herself. Hey, I said when she picked up. This is going to sound weird, but I have a question. You want dirt on Emily, don't you? She said without hesitation. I blinked. Yeah. You're not the first guy she's done this to. What? She used to flirt with my boyfriend when we were still in school. And Brian? She's been into him forever. He's not even the first neighbor she's gotten weird with. She ever, record stuff? Jessica hesitated. Are you asking if she made videos with him? Yeah. I don't know, she said slowly. But she once told me guys pay better when they think they're stealing someone else's girl. Like it's part of the thrill. That stopped me cold. You're saying she. I'm saying Emily knows exactly what she's doing. She gets off on being watched. It's not about love, it's about control. And just like that, the picture changed. That night, I dug back into my hard drive. Rewatched some of the USB footage I had pulled from the PI. Not just the motel clips, but a few I hadn't paid much attention to before. One, in particular, chilled me. It was from our own bedroom. From the camera I had set up during the night I pretended to be asleep. I had seen the clip before, her tiptoeing past me, letting Brian inside, kissing him in the hallway. But this time, I watched the end. And I realized something terrifying. Before they went into the guest room, Emily glanced at the bedroom door, and smiled directly into the camera. She knew. She knew I was watching. It was a performance. Not just for Brian. Not even for herself. For me. She wanted me to see. I felt sick. All this time, I'd thought I was in control. That I had flipped the game on her. That my silence, my recordings, my revenge, it was my way of reclaiming power. But she had started it long before I even noticed. She had been playing me like a second controller the whole time. And yet, that didn't break me. It sharpened me. Because now I understood the rules. And I was the only one left who knew how to finish the game. I started phase 3 the next morning. I uploaded the final anonymous clip, not explicit, just suggestive. A short one, captioned. She smiled for the camera. Because the real thrill was never the cheating, it was being caught. I made sure it was traced back to one of the online communities Emily used to lurk in. I even faked a few responses from fake accounts, like old fans of hers resurfacing. And I waited. The fallout came fast. She deactivated her Instagram. Her DMs leaked, screenshots from messages to men I'd never even heard about. She wasn't just sneaking around with Brian. There were others. Men who paid for photos. For calls. For who knows what else. She wasn't a cheater. She was building a secret empire off betrayal. And now it was crumbling. Brian, for his part, didn't last long. Lester sent me a photo the next week, Brian working a roadside tire change gig. Lost his job at the shop. Apparently, word had gotten around about the guy who hooks up with married women and ends up getting cops at his door. I printed the photo. Folded it. Put it in a drawer. A reminder. A few days later, I came home to find an envelope slid under my apartment door. My name, in her handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You got what you wanted. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I hope someday someone looks at you the way I used to. And I hope they betray you so you finally understand what you did to me. There was no return address. No phone number. Just bitterness on paper. I read it once. Then I set it on fire. She wanted the last word. But I had the last laugh. Because the truth is, I'm not happy. Not yet. But I'm getting there. And I still have one move left. The burn mark from Emily's note was still on the edge of my sink when I got home from work. I kept glancing at it that evening. I don't know why. Maybe because it still felt like her voice was echoing in my head. I hope they betray you so you finally understand what you did to me. I'd dismissed it when I read it. I even laughed. But now, the way she worded it, it wasn't just a guilt trip. It sounded like a clue. A breadcrumb. And I didn't like where my thoughts were going. I sat down at my laptop that night and opened the drive where I'd stored all the surveillance footage. Everything from the private investigator, the hidden camera clips, even a few phone recordings. I opened the folders one by one, scrolling. Then I found something strange. A folder I didn't recognize. I don't remember making it. It didn't have a timestamp like the others. The date was older, almost a full year before I even suspected Emily of cheating. Inside, there was just one file. That was back when we used to keep our VR equipment in the garage. Before we moved it to the living room. I double-clicked it. The footage was grainy, black and white. I fast-forwarded through the first few minutes, just the usual, Emily stepping in and out, moving boxes, plugging something in. Then, suddenly, a car door slammed off-screen. Brian appeared in frame. But this wasn't the Brian I'd come to know recently. This was long before I even suspected him of looking at her through the window. He wasn't even our neighbor yet. In the footage, Emily ran up to him and threw her arms around his neck. They kissed. My jaw dropped. This was from before we even met him. And she knew him. Not just knew him. They had a history. I sat frozen as the footage kept playing. She whispered something into his ear. He grinned and reached into his pocket, pulled out something small and black. It looked like a USB stick. He handed it to her. And then, before she walked back into the house, she glanced straight at the camera and turned it off. My hands were shaking now. That clip wasn't something I had collected during my investigation. That file had always been there, buried deep, in a backup folder I never checked. And someone, maybe Emily, had tried to hide it there. I started piecing it together. Emily had known Brian before we moved into this apartment complex. She must have suggested the place for a reason. Maybe she even pulled strings to get him to rent the unit next to us. This wasn't just an affair. It was a setup. I didn't sleep that night. I kept pacing the room, thinking about every small, weird moment that suddenly made sense. The way she used to talk about coincidence bringing people back into your life. The way she pushed to move here, even though I had found better apartments for less rent. The fact that Brian never once mentioned a job interview, just suddenly appeared in the neighborhood after we moved in. It wasn't random. She planted him. But why? What did she want? The next morning, I called Lester. "You're not going to believe what I found," I told him. He listened. Went silent. Then said, "You need to look deeper." "What do you mean?" "You said she had a USB stick, right? From him? Maybe it wasn't about cheating. Maybe it wasn't even about you. Maybe they were working you for something else entirely. What would they get from me?" "Depends. You got anything valuable? Stocks? Inheritance?" That hit me. 2 years ago, my uncle left me a small portfolio of crypto. Not much. But enough that it had grown into 6 figures when the market boomed. I never touched it. Never talked about it. Except, once. To Emily. That same afternoon, I logged into the crypto wallet. The room spun for a while. 6 figures, gone. Stolen right under my nose while I was chasing shadows, watching bedroom tapes and planning my petty revenge. I thought I was 2 steps ahead, but it turned out I'd been playing on a board she built, with rules she wrote in a language I couldn't read. I tried calling the exchange to see if anything could be traced. No luck. The wallets were broken into microtransactions and passed through privacy mixers. I knew what that meant. This wasn't just Emily and Brian on some Bonnie and Clyde love trip. This was orchestrated. Precise. And if it was bigger than them, I had to figure out who else was involved. That night I revisited everything: messages, photos, emails. There had to be something I missed. Somewhere, buried in all this noise, was the truth. It didn't take long. An old email from Emily's tablet. One I'd forgotten about. Subject: Invoice, November 22nd, discretion guaranteed. It came from a sender named Cypress Solutions. Generic name, no logo. Attached was a PDF with a list of vague, consulting services, and a payment of $12,000. 12 grand. Paid by Emily, 1 month before I caught her and Brian in the house. The only listed contact was a burner email. I opened the PDF's metadata. Author, D. Kenslow. That name I remembered. Barely. Dennis Kenslow. Emily had once mentioned him. Some guy she met through a women's self-defense workshop. Back then, I didn't think anything of it. Just some retired army vet turned life coach, supposedly. But now? That workshop might have been recruitment. This, consulting, might have been training. And $12,000? That wasn't for protection. That was for a plan. I spent the next few days chasing Dennis. Every public record. Every social media mention. Finally tracked a photo of him through an old Facebook post, a stocky guy, maybe in his late 40s, military haircut, posing in front of a range. The post was 5 years old, but the location tagged, Ashwood Security and Tactical, Little River, AR. I had no reason to drive to Arkansas. Until now. The drive took 6 hours. The security place was out past a tree line, like a warehouse that wanted to disappear. I didn't walk in pretending to be a customer. I walked in looking like a pissed-off husband who had just been mugged by his own wife. Looking for Dennis Kenslow, I told the guy at the desk. The man looked up. Tense. "You got an appointment?" "Nope. But he'll want to talk to me. Tell him it's about Emily Pelham." That name worked like a key. He stared at me for a beat, then picked up the phone. 10 minutes later, I was face to face with Kenslow himself. Thick arms, neck like a fire hydrant, and the eyes of a guy who'd done more than just teach yoga with pepper spray. "You drove a long way, son," he said. "What makes you think I'll give you anything?" I tossed the invoice on his desk. His face twitched. Then he smiled. "I see she kept the receipt." At first, he played coy. Said he couldn't give details, client confidentiality. But I didn't come unprepared. "I know about the wallet," I said. "The crypto. The theft. The fake neighbor. You trained her for this, didn't you? Not just to seduce, but to con." His eyes narrowed. Then, he leaned back and sighed. "Look," he said. "I don't know how much you've figured out, but I'll tell you this, Emily didn't just want to hurt you. She wanted to erase you. Start fresh. She came to me with a plan and two priorities, privacy, and permanent escape." I stared. Escape to where? She never said. But she was building a second life, and from what I could tell, she'd done it before. That knocked the wind out of me. "Done it before?" I repeated. He nodded. "She changed names. Locations. You weren't her first husband. You were just the first who almost figured her out before the exit." I walked out of there feeling like my skin didn't fit right anymore. What kind of person had I married? How many men had she left behind, empty, confused, robbed, while she disappeared into the next life? Was I just another mark? A stepping stone in a path paved with fake tears and soft moans? Back at home, I searched through old paperwork. Emily had a habit of hiding things in plain sight, shoeboxes marked with old game titles, folders labeled taxes. That's when I found it. Tucked inside a PS2 case of Silent Hill 2, behind the instruction manual, a single key. Attached to it, a tag. Locker 14, Valley Pines Storage. I didn't know she had a storage unit. But I sure as hell was going to find out what she'd left behind. The storage facility was an hour out. Rundown place, open 24/7. When I flashed the key and the tag, the manager didn't even blink, just waved me down the corridor. The metal door screeched open like a coffin. Inside, 3 boxes, 1 suitcase, and a locked file cabinet. I opened the suitcase first. Clothes. IDs. Makeup. Wigs. A burner phone. I sat there in the dim light of the storage unit, my heart pounding harder than I ever thought possible. 4 different IDs, all with different names, none belonging to the woman I thought I married. It was like I'd been living with a ghost. Or worse, a stranger who'd stolen my life. The locked file cabinet was next. I pulled out the keys from my pocket, the ones I found tucked away inside an old game case, and slid one into the lock. It clicked open with a satisfying snap. Inside were stacks of folders, labeled with dates, places, and names I didn't recognize. Names that made me shiver. One folder caught my eye, case file, Valley Pines incident. The dates inside were from years ago. I flipped it open. Photos. Police reports. Witness statements. And then, a newspaper clipping. Missing woman found dead in Valley Pines storage unit, identity unknown. The victim was a woman in her 30s. The photo looked eerily like Emily, same eyes, same jawline, but the story said she disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the police never found her killer. The folder also contained several encrypted USB drives. I shoved everything into the suitcase. Driving home, I kept thinking about that file. Was Emily connected to that case? Was she the missing woman? Or worse, was she involved somehow? I had to know. Back at the apartment, I sat at my laptop, plugging in one of the USB drives. It took a moment, then opened a folder filled with videos. The first clip was shaky, grainy footage from a handheld camera. A woman, Emily, was arguing with a man. The argument was heated. Threatening. She held up a small bag, then shoved it into the man's hands. "Keep it safe," she said. "If anything happens to me, you have to deliver it." The video ended abruptly. I played the next one. It was a map, marked with red dots all over the state. Locations of, what? I couldn't tell. The third video was a voicemail from an unknown number. A woman's voice, shaky, whispered, "They're coming. I'm sorry. If you find this, be careful." I realized then that I was not just chasing a cheating wife. I was chasing a mystery. Emily's past was tangled in something dangerous. Something she had been running from for years. The next day, I decided to confront Emily. I sent her a message. "We need to talk. Now." She didn't reply. Instead, when I got home, the apartment was empty. I never thought my life would come down to a storage unit, stolen crypto, and mysterious videos. But there I was, alone in the apartment, the weight of everything heavy on my shoulders. Emily was gone. No note, no calls, no trace. But I had the files, the keys, and the truth buried beneath all the lies. Days passed, then weeks. I dug through every lead, every contact, every shadow of Emily's past. I contacted detectives, old acquaintances, even a private eye I trusted from the beginning. But the more I searched, the more it felt like chasing smoke. Then, one evening, my phone rang. No caller ID. I answered. A voice, cold and deliberate. "Looking for Emily?" I swallowed hard. "Who is this?" "Let's just say I know her well." The line went dead. The next morning, I found a small envelope slipped under my door. Inside, a USB drive and a note. "Play the last game." Back at my laptop, I plugged in the drive. A single video file appeared. I clicked it open. The video showed Emily, alive, smiling, sitting in a dimly lit room. She looked straight at the camera. "Hi," she said. "If you're watching this, then you've found my secrets." She paused, then her face hardened. "I never wanted to hurt you. But some games, they're bigger than us." She explained everything, the fake identities, the setup with Brian, the stolen crypto. She wasn't just a con artist, she was running from something worse, a criminal syndicate that had forced her into this life. The storage unit? A safety net. The men who came after her? Real. Then, the real shock. "I never left you for good. I needed you to disappear so they'd stop looking for you." Her eyes softened. "I still love you." I sat back, stunned. Was it all a lie? Or the cruelest truth? Suddenly, the screen went black. Then a message typed out. "Game over. Your move." I stared at the screen. Was this a threat? An invitation? Or the start of something new? I realized then. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun.